So this division now, a vote on the opposition's attempts to suspend standing orders over the claims of breaches of the government's Ministerial Code of Conduct. Thanks so much for joining us on Sky News. Lots to get through. Stay with us throughout the afternoon because we've got some fresh news on this front. Our political editor Andrew Clennell with me in the studio. And as this debate unfolds in the Parliament, you've got some breaking news on another minister who appears to be in breach of the Code of Conduct.
That's right, Kieran. Assistant Treasurer Stephen Jones is the latest to have questions raised as to whether he has breached the Ministerial Code of Conduct. As we revealed yesterday concerning Assistant Health Minister Ged Kearney, the Ministerial Code of Conduct only allows ministers to have investments in managed funds, quote, where the fund or trust does not invest to any significant extent in a business sector that could give rise to a conflict of interest with the minister's public duty. Stephen Jones has declared to the Parliament investments in Vanguard Australian Shares Index, which has 28% of its shares in banking and insurance. He also has shares in Vanguard Active Global Growth Fund, which has 10% of those shares in the finance sector. Just today, Mr Jones introduced bills to the House which impact banks. I put questions to Mr Jones today on whether he was going to sell this interest, given it appeared to be in breach of the code. And the minister claimed in a statement he had ensured he was complying with the code, saying, and I quote, I have investments in 2 Vanguard funds. They're worth $1,272 and $4,043 respectively. I disclose these investments and ensure they are in compliance with the Ministerial Code. I don't directly own shares and have no say in the investment decisions of the funds. Also in relation to Assistant Health Minister Ged Kearney, we pointed out yesterday that she has interests in 5 managed funds which have significant health interest. The Ministerial Code of Conduct also says that ministers should encourage family members to dispose of or not to invest in shares in companies which operate in their area of responsibility. Well, Ged Kearney's husband has shares in CSL, Cochlear and Medibank Private. The manager of opposition business, Paul Fletcher, had this to say on the application by the PM of his Code of Conduct today.
There's been no referral of this matter to the Secretary of Prime Minister and Cabinet. We've not had it explained as to why this is not a matter that should be of concern. We need to see the Prime Minister and his ministers demonstrate that they are taking compliance with the Ministerial Code. This is a test about whether the Prime Minister, whether the Albanese Labor government are going to live up to their rhetoric on transparency and accountability.
Now, the government says none of these ministers are in breach, but the code appears to suggest otherwise. And Anthony Albanese revealed in question time that Ged Kearney has now sold out of that managed fund, which manages health assets as Assistant Minister for Health.
Following the breach of the Ministerial Code by the Minister for Regional Development, Local Government and Territories, I refer to media reports that the Assistant Minister for Health has invested in managed funds or unit trusts which in turn have significant shareholdings in Australian healthcare businesses or private health insurance businesses. Does the Minister have an obligation under Clause 3.12 of your Ministerial Code to notify you of this conflict of interest?
The Assistant Minister has advised, she has ensured that she has been compliant with this. The Assistant Minister also wrote to me this morning to formally advise that she's taken the additional step of divesting all of her interests.
We use Peter Dutton and Anthony Albanese head-to-head in question time on this issue and the alleged breaches.
Prime Minister, we're now in a situation where ministers are liquidating their interests at a rate of knots. And given that 3 ministers have disclosed shareholdings when your code prohibits this, who assesses this strict adherence and why have you so dismally failed to enforce it?
The fact is that my entire ministerial team have been entirely transparent. And I tell you what, if you want to talk about integrity, you're going to have a big chance. Your big chance is next week when there's a National Anti-Corruption Commission bill presented to this Parliament.
So the opposition court marked Dreyfus, the Attorney-General, on the hop in question time. They said his super fund has a significant investment in a firm which benefited from a government decision. They invest in Greenscape, the largest shareholder of Omni Bridgeway. They're Australia's biggest litigation funders, have lobbied the AG's department, and on 2nd of September, as I understand it, Dreyfus and Stephen Jones issued a press release unwinding the treatment of class action plaintiffs And then Omni Bridgeway on the 5th of September released a market announcement to the Australian Stock Exchange welcoming the announcement by the government. So Mark Dreyfus starts out here saying, look, I'm not in breach. And he ends up saying, look, I'm going to have to examine this. And that's where they move the suspension motion, and that spells political trouble for the government. Because surely some of these matters, at some point, they're going to have to admit are breaches of the code, and that's several ministers breaching the code. Even if it's only for a short period until things are pointed out to them, what's the point of a code if it's not observed? Here's the exchange with Mark Dreyfus earlier.
I refer to the Attorney-General's disclosure that he invests in the Green Cape Broadcap Fund. Does this fund hold shares in Omni Bridgeway, a listed litigation funding business, which recently issued an ASX statement welcoming a decision from the Attorney-General? And if so, is he satisfied that this shareholding does not give rise to a perception of a conflict of interest?
I will look at the matter that has been raised by the honourable member, but I can assure the House that every single one of the publicly listed managed funds that my private superannuation fund invests in have been fully disclosed.
So it's been a few days boiling. In fact, last week into this week, and just gradually more and more claims of the breaches. And that statement there, I'll look into it. It says that we'll be focusing a bit more on it next week as well.
Definitely. And look, our story's kicked it off. There's a chap has a website, openpolitics.com.au. He pointed it out to me, and then more and more became available, and the opposition piggybacked, and I think they've had a win today with Dreyfus, frankly.